To all my rational thinkers, I'm your strategic observer, Maggie Liu. This round is the ultimate reckoning with sunk costs. Let's take a look. Before my father died, he used the debt owed to him to have me sent into the Shia household. We had been married for 5 years, yet no outsider knew that I was Shijinja's wife. Then came the news of Suwan's divorce. With a single remark, how could she possibly be a concubine? Shijinja demanded that I surrender my place as his lawful wife. I calmly signed the divorce agreement and asked to leave, but he went mad and confined me, swearing that after their grand wedding, he would take me back into the household as a concubine and provide for me for the rest of my life. I refused. I set a fire and burned every trace of my past to ashes. 3 years later, at a bridge in Jiangnian, the man blocked my path, his eyes red. I regret it. Will you come back and be the mistress of the Shi household? The day after Suwan's divorce, Shijinja came to my courtyard. The courtyard was packed with 88 redwood chests, all filled with betrothal gifts he had prepared for the woman he loved. I promised her that she would be the only woman I married in this life. If not for you, she would have become my wife long ago. Now that she is free, if you have any consideration for us, you should ask to step down and give Wanwan your place as my lawful wife. What he meant was that I should take the initiative and let myself be demoted from wife to concubine. Whatever resentment you feel, direct it at me alone. Do not take it out on her. I tightened my grip on my handkerchief and looked up at him. A trace of melancholy flickered in his eyes, but the instant he looked at me, they filled with utter distaste. A faint sigh passed through my heart. After 5 years, I still had not managed to move him. In all 5 years of our marriage, Shijinja had never touched me and had rarely set foot in my room. He was always either at the military camp or away at war. No one knew that Shijinja was married. He would not allow me to leave the residence, nor did he ever take me to a banquet. As far as he was concerned, I was someone who could never be brought into the light. Anyone who tried to arrange a marriage with the Shi household was turned down by him. Everyone believed that young General Shi Jinji, famed throughout the capital, would spend his life alone for Suwan. But now Suwan was divorced, and Shi Jinji finally had his chance. All right, I understand. Enough. I was tired too, whether he ended up alone or finally had his wish fulfilled. His life from now on would have nothing to do with me. The corner of Shijinja's eye twitched. The disdain on his face suddenly eased a little. His lips moved, but in the end he said nothing. We had never had anything to say to each other. Shijinja handed me the divorce agreement. After Wanwan and I marry, I will draw up a concubinage contract for you. Don't worry. I promised your father that I would take care of you. You may continue living here. I will support you for the rest of your life. Calmly, I signed and sealed the divorce agreement, then pressed my fingerprint onto it. I did not hesitate in the slightest. Both parties consent to the separation, with neither pursuing the return of betrothal gifts or dowry. I added that sentence to the agreement. Shijinja's gaze shifted when he saw it. I handed him the signed document. Have your attendant take it to the authorities. Once it was filed with the Yamen, we would part in peace, and each seek happiness elsewhere. Before leaving, Shijinja glanced at me. You will continue living here as long as I am around. No one will say anything. With that, he turned and left. His departing figure was resolute, but it could not conceal his joy. A wave of bitterness rose in my chest. My vision gradually blurred, and I did not even notice my fingertips turning white. At last, he was going to marry the woman he loved. During the battle at the frontier 5 years ago, my father took a sword thrust meant for Shijinji. Before he died, he entrusted me to him. At the time, I did not know that he already had someone in his heart. We married in haste at the frontier, and his adjutant went to the government office to collect our marriage certificate for him. He treated me very well, providing fine clothes, rich food, and servants in abundance. I thought I had found a good man. When I burned incense for my father, I told him I was doing well and that his spirit need not worry about me. But Shijinja never touched me, nor did he ever come to my courtyard of his own accord. I assumed he was simply too busy to concern himself with the women's quarters. Then he brought me back to the capital. Suwan and her husband came to the Shi residence to pay a visit to Shijinja. who had just been promoted to first-rank military marquis. I went to serve wine and saw the astonishing love and longing in his eyes as he looked at Suwon. The intensity of it made my heart miss a beat. Suwon asked about me. Shijinja merely replied lightly, "The orphan daughter of a subordinate. I'm looking after her on his behalf." My wrist trembled. The wine cup slipped from my hand and a shard of porcelain cut my calf, drawing thin beads of blood. The pain made even the tip of my heart tremble. Suwan cried out and hurriedly summoned the servants. "Miss Shen is a guest. How can you let her do a servant's work?" Si Jinji also frowned in displeasure. "The servants will handle such things. You should focus on recovering from your injury." His tone was filled with impatience and disdain. The pain in my chest spread through my entire body. It hurt so badly that I trembled all over. I did not even know how to let my tears fall. I forced down my emotions and did my best to remain calm. "Thank you, General." I lowered my head and withdrew. Pushing away the maid who came to support me, I walked back alone. Tears streamed down my face before I could even lift my handkerchief to wipe them away. All the questions I had once harbored finally had an answer. I could no longer deceive myself. He was not busy. He simply did not want to spend time with me. Nor was he indifferent to the women's quarters. It was simply that the woman he wanted there was not me. His kindness to me was nothing more than the fulfillment of my father's dying wish. Clutching a veranda pillar, I stumbled back to my courtyard. The scenery was unchanged, yet now it seemed desolate and barren. That evening, Shijinji came to see me and asked a few concerned questions about my wound. He did not mention Suwan or anything that had happened during the day. He gave me a kingfisher feather hairpin inlaid with gold filigree. It was the first gift he had ever given me. Although I did not care for gold jewelry, I was still overjoyed. I placed the hairpin in my hair and silently encouraged myself. All that was in the past. Suwan was already married, and I was the one who had married Shijinji now. It did not matter. We had plenty of time ahead of us. But reality struck me down almost at once. News of Suwan's divorce caused an uproar. At Prince Rong's birthday celebration, she and Shijinji met secretly on the hill behind the prince's estate. They were caught in the act by the assembled guests. Suwan's husband was the legitimate son of the chief grand secretary. How could his family tolerate such humiliation? The very next day, they produced a divorce agreement. That at least preserved Suwan's dignity. They did not repudiate her outright. The Su family considered her a disgrace and refused to let her return home. Shijinji personally went to fetch her and escorted her into the Su residence. To protect her reputation, he arrived with 88 loads of betrothal gifts to propose on the second day after her divorce. It was a magnificent spectacle. Everyone in the capital praised Shijinja for finally seeing the clouds part to reveal the moon and being united with his true love. The servants at the general's residence also grew busy. Festive lanterns and decorations appeared everywhere, and every face shone with joy. My courtyard alone showed no sign of activity. It was so quiet that it hardly seemed part of the general's residence. When Suwan came over, I was packing my belongings. In truth, there was little to pack. When I hastily married Shijinja, my father had not had time to prepare a dowry for me. After the wedding, the fertile fields, shops, and servants under my name had all been arranged by Shijinja. For a girl from a family like mine to marry Shijinji was supposedly the reward for extraordinary virtue in a past life. I had enjoyed several years of wealth and comfort. Now the golden dream was over, and everything had come to nothing. Suwan could now come and go from the general's residence as she pleased. A privilege Shijinji had granted her. It was a freedom even I had never possessed. Jinji's parents have both passed away. He was worried he might overlook something, so he asked me to come and take a look first. Her voice was bright and high, like a wild rose blooming in the wind. I secured my bundle. When she saw me, she hurried forward. "I hope I haven't disturbed you. I wanted to keep things simple, but Jinji insisted on making such a grand occasion of it." I could hear the boast in her words. This courtyard was the farthest from Shijinja's and stood in the most secluded corner of the estate. Even the servants putting up the decorations had deliberately avoided it. Suwan wore the look of someone certain of victory. She had presumably learned about Shijinji and me. She had come today for no other reason than to stake her claim. I lowered my eyes, giving her what she wanted. Number, please carry on. Satisfied with my answer, Suan began ordering the servants to carry things out. Everything here looks old. We may as well throw it away. It seems rather unlucky to keep it around. Her words carried an obvious implication, but I had no rebuttal. Seeing that I had nothing to say, Suan appeared delighted. She took my hand and put on a coquettish manner. Little sister, help me take a look. Is there anything else that needs changing? I'll have Gingy prepare it at once. Without betraying any emotion, I withdrew my arm, expressionless. I said, I have never had a wedding. I know nothing about such things. Gingy walked in just in time to hear those words. His steps halted and a hint of guilt appeared on his face. The sight struck me as deeply ironic. Suan skipped over and threw herself into Gingy's arms, behaving intimately as though no one else were present. Gingy, I came to chat with little sister. His attention immediately shifted to her. He wrapped both arms around her, smiling warmly. When Suan turned her head, she saw the gold hairpin lying on my table. Without asking, she picked it up. Really, Gingy? How could you give my jewelry to little sister? That was terribly improper of you. As she spoke, she placed the gold hairpin in her own hair. Dear little sister, please don't be angry. Gingy is a man. He probably knows nothing about these things. Tomorrow, I will be sure to give you a better hairpin. Gingy glanced at me without saying a word. I raised my head and quietly refused. That hairpin is mine. Miss Sue already has many hairpins. Please return this one to me. Suan evidently had not expected me to be so direct. Her face stiffened, her eyes instantly reddened, and she lowered her head, standing weakly beside the man. Gingy's expression darkened. Qingyao Wanwan is my future wife. You should show her more respect. This gold hairpin was hers to begin with. Bitterness spread through my heart. So the hairpin he had given me that day had merely been something Suan did not want. Suan smiled at me. Triumph radiated from her every feature. I looked away and turned to Gingy. He stood protectively beside Suan, his expression cold. Wanwan will soon enter this household. It would be improper for an unmarried woman like you to continue living in my residence. I have already found you another place to live. Move there tomorrow. His eyes were utterly bleak. I lowered my gaze and replied softly, all right. Now that he was marrying the woman he loved, naturally no other woman could remain in the residence. I understood all of that. Finding me somewhere else to live was already the greatest concession Suan was willing to make. From now on, Gingy and I would have nothing to do with each other. I left the residence without waiting for the next day. Only Baiji came with me. She had once been Gingy's personal maid. After our marriage, seeing that I had no maid of my own, he assigned Baiji to me. I returned Baiji's indenture to her and gave her some silver granting her freedom. After Baiji left, I went to an escort agency. I had planned to pay to travel south with one of their caravans. After all, as a woman traveling alone, there was no telling whom I might encounter on the road. Unfortunately, the southbound caravan had just departed. I would have to wait several days for the next one. I paid a deposit and arranged to depart with the caravan in 7 days. Afterward, I went to the southern market. It was the busiest street in the capital. Several shops Gingy had given me stood along that street. I went through the shop's account books, deeds and documents one by one, then sealed them away. I instructed each shopkeeper whom to contact for future account reconciliations. Last came the Linlang Pavilion. It was also my favorite jade shop. Having grown up at the frontier, I had loved every kind of jade since childhood. Even the ornaments and hairpins I wore were all made of jade. The shop often sent over pieces of fine jade. When I had nothing else to do, I would carve designs into them myself. Bit by bit, I etched what was in my heart into the stone. Most often, I carved Gingy. Those may have been my happiest moments in the Shire residence. Gingy once asked why he never saw me wearing gold or silver. I could not explain why. When he saw how much I loved jade, he transferred the Linlang Pavilion into my name the very next day. Since you like it, have them search for whatever kind of jade you want. He said my quiet temperament suited jade. When Gingy said that, there was a smile in his eyes. It lent an extra warmth and gentleness to his already handsome face. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. Heat rose into my cheeks. At the time, I truly believed that I had begun to matter to him. But in the end, it had all been nothing more than an illusion. After hearing my instructions, the manager of the Linlang Pavilion looked at me in surprise. "The general gave this shop to you, madam. Are you returning it to him?" I smiled and corrected him. "The general will soon marry from now on. You must be careful not to let the wrong title slip in front of outsiders." The manager froze, then lowered his head in silence. Finally, I handed the account books, documents, and storeroom key to him. As I emerged from the back hall, I happened to see Shijinja helping Suwan choose jewelry. His eyes were smiling, and every feature was filled with indulgence. "What made you suddenly want to wear a jade hairpin? I remember you always preferred gold and silver." Suwan shot him a coquettish look, brimming with charm. "They say jade nourishes its wearer. What, am I not allowed to like it?" Shijinja laughed helplessly. All right, of course you can. My Wanwan may like whatever she wishes. See if anything catches your eye." Standing face to face, the two of them were so radiant that it hurt to look at them. I intended to slip quietly past them, but Shijinja suddenly turned and saw me. He frowned instinctively and looked to my side. Seeing me alone, his gaze turned dark and cold. "Why are you by yourself? Where is Baiji?" I lowered my head to avoid his eyes and answered evenly. "I merely came out for a walk. I did not bring her." Shijinja's frown deepened. "You're unfamiliar with the area. What if you get lost?" His face was angry and his tone severe. I took a small step back and said nothing. Suwan hurried forward and linked her arm through his. "Jinji, don't be angry. We can have someone escort little sister back later." Jinji closed his eyes, suddenly realizing that he had lost his composure. "Have someone escort you back later. From now on, do not wander about alone." Was he afraid I would tell people about our relationship? I smiled bitterly to myself. Even after 5 years, he still did not trust me. At dusk, Shijinja suddenly arrived. A crowd of servants and household guards followed behind him. He looked displeased. Baiji returned to the Shai residence and said you gave her back her indenture. "Shen Qingyao, are you doing this to spite me?" I lowered my eyes and replied, I truly was not trying to spite him. I was simply leaving now. Naturally, I needed to find new places for the people around me. I had merely forgotten that Baiji belonged to Shijinji. Shijinji was dissatisfied with my answer. I could not be bothered to argue. He could say whatever he wished. Silently, I considered what else I needed to take when I left. "If you don't want Baiji, then I'll replace her with someone else." "You are all alone. How can you have no one to attend you?" I was about to refuse, but he cut me off. "I made a promise to your father, and I will never break my word." With that, he left a group of maids and household guards behind, giving me no chance to object. After 5 years, I knew all too well that this man's word was final. Once he made a decision, no one could change it. That was why I had not tried to keep him when he asked for a divorce. I knew that saying more would be useless. While Shijinja personally assigned the staff in the courtyard, Suwan arrived. It was an early spring evening, and the chill seeped into the bones. She stood there in a thin gown, looking frail and pitiable. Shijinja strode over, removed his outer robe, and carefully draped it over her shoulders. Then he gently took her hands in his. "You're dressed so lightly, and your hands are freezing. The people around you are far too careless." Suwan lowered her head shyly. "I came out to look for you and forgot to put on another layer." Shijinja's eyes filled with concern. "I would have returned after settling matters here. What was the hurry?" Suwan smiled and touched the gold hairpin in her hair. The hairpin truly suited her. The last rays of sunset fell across the two of them, glimmering like scattered starlight. The sight stung my eyes until they ached. I stood beneath the veranda watching them with a sick, desperate greed. Shijinji was a military commander, a man accustomed to flashing blades on the battlefield, who never paid attention to the smallest detail. Yet now his eyes overflowed with tenderness as he worried whether a woman was cold. Other than from my parents, I had not experienced such concern in a very, very long time. Suwan looked toward me. I hastily looked away and fled back inside. My thoughts were in turmoil, and tears poured down my face. So the deep affection of my youth had been nothing more than devotion wasted on the wrong man. Only today did I finally understand. Some feelings could not be forced, not even with time. Footsteps sounded behind me. I hurriedly wiped away my tears and turned around. Suwan stood behind me, wrapped in the oversized outer robe. Jinji is still an unrelated man, so it would be improper for him to come inside. There are some things I should explain clearly to you myself. I straightened my back and met her eyes. Go ahead. She took a half-burned letter from inside her robe. While I was sorting through Jinji's old belongings, I thought this letter was useless, so I intended to burn it. Jinji saw it and picked it up. He said your father had left it behind. I'm sorry, I didn't know at the time half of it had already burned, and this is all that remains, Suwan apologized, but the corner of her mouth quietly lifted. She slowly approached and handed the letter to me. Would you like to see what is written in the part that remains? Her icy words were like a venomous snake. The chill made me shudder, yet spring had clearly already begun. My father's handwriting on the half-burned letter had faded beyond clarity, but enough remained to tell that he had indeed written it. It said, when the general arranges a marriage for my daughter in the future, I ask only that the man possess good character, regardless of his family background. Her husband's family need not be rich or noble. I wish only for my daughter to live a safe and peaceful life. My fingertips trembled. The thin sheet of paper seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. So my father had never wanted me to marry Shai Jinji. He had only hoped that after his death, Shai Jinji would look after me from time to time. Tears slipped soundlessly down my cheeks. All these years I had believed that my father had used his sacrifice to demand repayment. I had always felt guilty towards Shai Jinji. But now, after seeing my father's letter, I was suddenly lost. What had all those years of guilt towards Shai Jinji amounted to? Suwan appeared very satisfied with my reaction. She lifted a cup of tea and approached at a leisurely pace. Come to think of it, I was partly to blame. Back then, I married someone else. I suppose he married you merely to spite me. You lost so many years because of us. Please accept this cup of tea as my apology. I hope Miss Qingyao can find it in her heart not to blame me. I looked at the cup of tea in her hand, my voice icy. An apology? Fine. Have Fijinji come in and kneel before me himself. Only then would it count as an apology. Suwan froze for a moment, then sneered. You think you're worthy of that? The instant the words left her mouth, she threw the entire cup of tea into her own face. Ah! Her scream drew Shai Jinji inside. Moving swiftly, Suwan snatched the letter from my hand and swallowed it. Little sister Qingyao, what are you doing? She collapsed to the floor, her hair disheveled and her clothes soaked. Shai Jinji strode inside, shoved me aside, and gathered Suwan into his arms. I staggered back 2 steps and struck the dressing table behind me. A dull pain shot through my lower back. The pain made me gasp, leaning against Shai Jinji. Suwan looked at me through tear-filled eyes. I don't know how I offended you. You need only have said something. Why humiliate me like this? With a cold expression, I steadied my breathing. You destroyed my letter and then tried to frame me. Miss Su, what a fine actress you are. Through gritted teeth, Shai Jinji demanded an explanation. I braced myself against the dressing table, trying to stay upright. If I said she threw the tea on herself, would you believe me? Shai Jinji paused and instinctively glanced at the woman in his arms. Suwan lowered her eyes and buried her head against his chest. She said nothing, she merely wept. Tears adorned her delicate face like raindrops on pear blossoms. The man raised his head, his gaze disgusted and cold. Wanwan is not that kind of person. I suddenly laughed aloud. Of course, they were childhood sweethearts who had grown up together. I was merely an outsider. Naturally, he would not believe me, but since I had already been given the blame, why should I let myself be wronged for nothing? I returned to the table and poured another cup of tea. Then I flung it hard into Suwan's face. This is the cup I threw. Unlike the cold tea Suwan had used, this cup was scalding hot. Suwan's scream sounded entirely different from before. It was shrill and piercing. This time she truly had been burned. Shai Jinji's expression changed abruptly, and he opened his mouth to question me. I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. I used every ounce of strength I had. Both of them stood frozen, staring at me in disbelief. Shi Jinzhe looked as though he had never known me. Shen Qingyao, have you lost your mind? Those 2 slaps had drained every bit of strength from my body. I braced myself against the table, my eyes filled with loathing. Shi Jinzhe, search your conscience. Did my father truly force you to marry me? At my question, panic flashed through Shi Jinzhe's eyes. He stiffly looked away and said nothing. At this point, what need did I have for an answer? Tears flooded my cheeks. So much resentment lodged in my throat. It would neither rise nor sink. The pressure left a dull ache in my chest. I hated myself for having been so blind. I had believed someone else's one-sided story far too easily, and endured so many years of grievance for nothing. In the end, I had only myself to blame for misjudging him. I had given my true heart to the wrong man. Shi Jinzhe left with Su Wan, but placed me under house arrest. He ordered his personal guards to surround my courtyard and forbade me from leaving at will. I was frantic. The day of my departure was almost here. Yet I was trapped without the slightest chance of escape. Even when I smashed everything in the room to pieces, Shi Jinzhe's men did not react. When I woke the next morning, every broken item had been replaced with a new one. Only one day remained before the escort caravan's departure. Just as I was trying to think of a way to escape, Shi Jinzhe suddenly came to see me. The moment he arrived, he dropped a stack of account books heavily onto the table. I gave you all these shops, and you returned every one of them to me. His face was dark and still, betraying no emotion. After so long together, I had learned to read him to some extent. Whenever he looked like this, it meant he was already furious beyond measure. I turned my head away, unwilling to look at him. They were yours to begin with. At my answer, Shi Jinzhe laughed instead. What is the meaning of this? He stared at me as though trying to see into my heart. Are you using this tactic to attract my attention? His words made me laugh in anger. I could not be bothered to explain. If that's what you think, then so be it. At last, anger colored the man's brow. Do not push your luck. Such contemptible tricks will only make me despise you more. I silently stepped back and met his gaze. If that's how you choose to see it, there is nothing I can do. I truly no longer wanted to remain entangled with him. He could say whatever he wanted. I did not know which word provoked him. Fury erupted in Shi Jinzhe's eyes. He seized my wrist. Shen Qingyao, do you want so badly to draw a clean line between us? His grip was powerful, and pain shot through my wrist. I instinctively tried to wrench free, but I lacked the strength. Shi Jinzhe, have you forgotten? We are already divorced. His voice was hoarse, as though he were desperately restraining something. I told you I would compensate you. Can you stop making trouble? I smiled bitterly to myself. In his eyes, everything I did was wrong. Whenever something involved me, he usually responded with impatience. It had happened far too many times. So many that I had long since grown numb. The corners of his eyes were red, and his gaze held an emotion too complicated for me to understand. I am the only person in this world you can rely on. Stop trying to spite me, all right? I turned my head aside and replied softly. All right, Shi Jinzhe said no more. Silence suddenly fell between us. A voice came from outside. It was Su Wan's maid asking when Shi Jinzhe would return to the residence. The grip around my wrist loosened. I took the opportunity to pull free and retreat from his reach. Shi Jinzhe straightened and adjusted his sleeves. Wan and I will be married in a few days. Behave yourself and do not make things difficult for me. I answered woodenly. I understand. Having received the answer he wanted, Shi Jinzhe's expression relaxed. He reached out and squeezed my shoulder. Stay here and wait obediently for me to return. I lowered my head without speaking and gave a faint nod. That evening, one of Shi Jinzhe's maids delivered a chest of jewelry. My lord selected these himself. He hopes you will accept them. Fine jade gleamed with a lustrous glow in the candlelight. The maid did not leave. She remained beneath the veranda. My lord said that if you do not like these, you may say so freely. He will choose some others for you. The Shen Qingyao of 5 years ago would probably have been too delighted for words. Unfortunately, I had long since outgrown that age. Once one had glimpsed the human heart, one no longer dared look directly at it. I closed the jewelry box to show that I accepted the gift. The maid looked up hesitantly. "Miss, is there any message you would like the servant to convey to my lord?" I stared at the candle flame, my eyes stinging. The maid bowed and withdrew. I sat motionless until deep into the night. The night watch sounded twice in the third watch. Just as sleep began to overtake me, my room suddenly caught fire. Household guards and maids rushed back and forth. The flames grew fiercer and fiercer. Only after the fire brigade arrived was the blaze gradually extinguished. By then, I was already sitting inside the escort agency. All I had to do was wait for dawn, and then I could set out for the south. As the sky began to brighten, the escort caravan finished its preparations. They had specially arranged a carriage for me. The wheels creaked as they turned. As we passed through the southern market, a horse galloped past, stirring a faint breeze. The lifted curtain revealed a fleeting glimpse of Shi Jinji. I saw clearly that his face was filled with profound grief. I had seen that expression only once before. 3 years ago we had just married then, and he treated me with courtesy and gentleness. But he never consummated our marriage. Every day when he returned, he slept in the study. I thought he was too tired, or perhaps merely shy. That day he returned and went to the study as usual. The weather was hot, so I personally prepared a sweet drink and took it to him. Outside the study, I heard him speaking with someone. "The woman I have always loved is Wanwan. If she had not married someone else, why would I have endured all these years at the frontier?" The grief on his face was plain to see. The sweet drink in my hand suddenly tasted bitter. All the excuses with which I had comforted myself became absurd. So he had long had someone in his heart. There had never been a place for me in Shi Jinji's heart, but I was young then and unwilling to accept it. I thought that since we were married, we would have to continue living as husband and wife. I believed that if I did well enough, he would eventually make a place for me in his heart. But the human heart could not bear scrutiny, and affection could not be forced. I had simply been too foolish. A month later, I parted ways with the escort caravan in Yangzhou. They continued south while I boarded a boat bound for Jiangnan. The waterway stretched on and on. I disembarked at a place chosen at random. It was a small waterside town called Qingshui. Fortunately, I had saved a considerable amount of money. I was not wealthy, but I had enough to live without worry. I bought a small house and settled there. The spring rain in the south carried a penetrating chill. I was caught in the rain while out one day. Combined with my difficulty adjusting to the local climate, it left me ill for more than 10 days. Had the woman next door and her son not cared for me, I might have died in bed. As soon as I recovered, I visited them with generous gifts to express my gratitude. The woman's surname was Zhou. She had only one son, a scholar studying for the imperial examinations. Once I had almost fully recovered, I planted some of my favorite flowers and greenery in the courtyard. Jiangnan's climate was pleasant, and the courtyard soon brimmed with life. When I had nothing to do, I would stroll slowly along the river. Time suddenly seemed to slow down. This place lacked the capital's splendor. But here, I was free. My heart was peaceful. I no longer had to exhaust myself trying to please anyone. Nor did I have to worry constantly about my every word and gesture. I could sleep until the sun was high, or sit beneath the veranda through a sleepless night and watch the moon until dawn. Here I could do whatever I pleased. I could live as my heart desired and act on my own whims. Gradually, I forgot those former days, the 5 years of neglect beside Shi Jinji, the endless nights and immeasurable loneliness. At last, I had come back to life. My days passed in quiet simplicity. 3 years flowed by like water, leaving no trace. I opened a jade shop in town. I carved jade pieces for customers. The income was modest, but at least I supported myself instead of living off my savings. Madame Zhou's son was leaving for the capital to sit the imperial examinations. I gave him a bamboo joint jade pendant and wished him success. News arrived that young Master Zhou had passed with honors. Gongs and drums filled the entire town with celebration. Well-wishers packed the alley, and carriages even lined the road before my house. I had never imagined that I would see Shi Jinji again in this life. He stood out so sharply from the crowd that I noticed him at once. For a moment I thought I was dreaming. Jiangnan lay veiled in mist and rain, just as it had when I first arrived 3 years earlier. Shi Jinji made his way slowly through the crowd. He stopped before the gate, tall and elegant, just as he had been when we first met. But 3 years had left him much thinner. The spirited young General Shi of those days had become reserved and weary. Even the arrogance in his features had faded. And when I saw him again, I felt none of the old stirrings in my heart. Shi Jinji's voice was strained. "Qingyao." I lowered my head and bowed. "Greetings, my lord." Shi Jinji froze. His voice was hoarse. "Qingyao, I have searched for you for 3 years." He seemed agitated, and the end of each sentence trembled. "I saw the jade pendant that man wore and knew at once that you had made it. Do you know how happy I was to learn that you were alive?" He must have meant the jade pendant I gave Zhou Yunqing. I looked at him quietly. "So you traveled thousands of miles merely to tell me this?" Shi Jinji shook his head, the smile on his lips strained. "They all said you were dead, but I never believed them." I raised my eyes to him, my heart utterly still. "What does it matter to you whether I live or die?" Panic and grief flashed across Shi Jinji's face. "I promised your father that I would." I calmly interrupted him. "General Shi, have you forgotten? We divorced 3 years ago. We severed all affection and obligation. You were free to marry, as was I, and neither of us had anything further to do with the other." With every word I spoke, Shi Jinji's face grew paler. After a long silence, his lips moved faintly. His voice was barely audible. "Qingyao." The clamour outside the courtyard continued unabated. Against it, Shi Jinji's voice sounded almost unreal. "When I first arrived in Jiangnan, I was trapped almost every day in the whirlpool of the past. Half asleep and half awake, I would find no one beside me. In an instant, it felt as though I had returned to those years in the Shi residence. I suffered nightmares night after night. I dreamed of Suan mocking me without restraint. I dreamed of Shi Jinji standing at her side, watching indifferently as I struggled in the current. Loneliness and emptiness closed around me, pressing down until I could not breathe. I even began to fear the arrival of night. I dared not sleep. The moment I closed my eyes, grief surged out beneath the cover of darkness. And now he thought a single request for forgiveness could erase everything that had happened. I smiled and stepped back. "I am living very well now. Please go back, Lord Shi." I shut the gates, sealing every person and matter outside. That night, I slept restlessly. In my dreams, I returned to the past again. A clap of spring thunder dragged me from the nightmare. A steady drizzle had begun outside. A nameless agitation rose in my chest. I did not sleep again that night. When I went out the next morning, Shi Jinji was still standing outside. It was as though he had never left. He was soaked to the skin. When he saw me, he managed a strained smile. "Qingyao." I did not want to speak to him. I closed the courtyard gate and set off for my shop. Shi Jinji followed. "Where are you going?" I did not answer. He did not grow angry, merely followed several paces behind. While I worked in the shop, he watched silently from the side. Customers coming and going studied him with varying expressions. "Lord Shah, do you have no official duties to attend to?" I was growing exasperated. 5 customers had already left in haste that day, frightened by Shi Jinji's intimidating presence. At last, a faint smile appeared in his cool eyes. "I have something to tell you." I nodded. "Go ahead." But Shi Jinji suddenly fell silent. I waited for a long while, yet he did not speak. I began to lose patience. "If you have nothing to say, please leave. You are interfering with my business." The man gave a bitter laugh. "Do you despise me so much now?" I clicked my tongue softly. "I would not say I despise you. You simply are interfering with my business. If there is nothing else, please leave at once. I still depend on this shop for my livelihood." Shi Jinji's lips moved. His voice was soft. "All right," he agreed, but merely moved elsewhere and stood like a post. Only after finishing all my work did I discover that Shi Jinji had disappeared. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. But when I returned home, I found that he had arrived before me. The courtyard was filled with fine pieces of uncut jade. He was still carrying more inside. I hurriedly stopped him. "Displeased?" I asked. Why are you doing this? Shijinja smiled somewhat awkwardly. You have no other particular interests. I had people collect these from Yangzhou. Keep whatever you like, give away or throw out the rest. You may dispose of them however you wish. He had not changed at all in 3 years. He still made every decision on his own and never asked what I wanted. I laughed in anger. Take them away the same way you brought them in. I do not want anything of yours. Sorrow appeared on Shijinja's face. Qingyao, do you still resent me? I shook my head. I do not resent you. I simply find anything connected to you filthy. Shijinji staggered back 2 steps. His lips moved soundlessly. I want this courtyard restored to its former state by tomorrow. Shijinji, I like my life as it is. Do not force me to leave again. With that, I went inside and shut the door tightly. Deep in the night, soft rustling sounds finally came from outside. I extinguished the lamp and went to bed. My dreams were filled with strange and shifting scenes. I woke from a nightmare drenched in sweat. Outside, the watchman's clapper sounded the 4th watch. Dawn would come before long. Good heavens, why are you standing here in the middle of the night instead of sleeping? The night watchman's voice rang especially clearly through the darkness. A shiver ran through my body as though compelled by some unseen force. I went outside. Through the gloom, I could make out someone standing beyond the gate. I almost opened it to tell him to go back. But after a moment's thought, I decided against it. What did his actions have to do with me? Early the next morning, knocking awakened me. Shijinja lay on the ground, soaked through. Madame Zhou was struggling to pull him up. When she opened the gate and he saw me, surprise and delight flashed through his eyes. He looked unwell. His face was pale and his whole body seemed waterlogged from the rain. I turned away and gave him directions. Go south, cross the stone bridge and walk 10 paces. There is a clinic there. Shijinji barely managed to lift the corner of his mouth. Qingyao. I looked at him coldly. The hope in his eyes slowly went out. In the end, it became despair. In the past, Shijinja was always covered in injuries, large and small. Every time I saw them, my heart ached. I carefully cleaned his wounds and changed his dressings, terrified that I might hurt him. Shijinji always laughed at me for making too much of it. He did not know that I had truly been afraid. I feared that he would be wounded like my father, that he would suddenly leave me, abandoning me alone in this world. Yet now, faced with Shijinji at his weakest, I felt nothing at all. In the end, Zhou Yinqing took Shijinja to the clinic. I went to the shop as usual. Before long, Zhou Yinqing came to see me, looking as though he wanted to speak but hesitated. I knew what he wanted to ask, but I had no wish to discuss it. After finishing my work at the shop, I returned home. Shijinji was already waiting in the courtyard. When he saw me, he took a jade hairpin from inside his robe. I made this myself before our divorce. I meant to give it to you on your birthday. Then so much happened that I never had the chance. After you left, I realized how terribly wrong I had been. All I wanted was to find you and apologize to you in person. For the first time in 3 years, he opened his heart to me. When I signed the divorce agreement, he had truly felt a flicker of regret. But you signed without the slightest hesitation, and it angered me. I was angry that you would not say anything to soften me. If you had only said you did not want the divorce, I would never have gone through with it. He said he regretted it then, but his pride would not allow him to back down first. I was young, proud, and foolish. I only wanted to win that quarrel. I never expected you to be so ruthless. You did not take a single thing I gave you. You were determined to sever every tie between us. When he learned that my courtyard had caught fire, his mind went blank. He stumbled to the ruins without even putting on his shoes. At that moment, I truly regretted it. Why had I tried to spite you? He knelt and dug through the wreckage with his bare hands. He continued speaking as if to himself. He said everyone believed I had died in the fire, but he refused to believe it. Living or dead, he had to see me with his own eyes. He searched every corner of the capital. Eventually, he found people from the escort agency who recognized my portrait. They told him I had last been seen in Yangzhou. Ignoring urgent official duties, he went to Yangzhou himself. I searched all of Yangzhou, but I still could not find you. Shijinja looked at me. the corners of his eyes faintly red. Fortunately, I found you in the end. His gaze was humble. Qingyao, will you give me one more chance? I will make everything up to you. Whatever you ask of me, I will do. I turned my head. Rain had begun to fall again outside. It was fine and dense, like a gauzy veil. Had I heard these words 3 years ago, I would have wept with emotion. But now, Shi Jinzhe, I want you to disappear from my world completely. Shi Jinzhe's face turned deathly pale, and the hand holding the hairpin shook violently. After I rejected him unequivocally, Shi Jinzhe disappeared for several days. My life returned to normal. Each day, I rose with the sun and rested at sunset. When I returned home one evening, Madame Zhou came over to visit. Again and again she tried to ask about Shi Jinzhe without doing so directly. Unable to withstand her persistence, I admitted, he is my former husband. Madame Zhou's eyes widened. She pondered for a long while but still could not understand. How could he bear to give up a girl as good as you? I smiled. Perhaps our fate had simply run its course. At that, Madame Zhou's eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, your fate with him has ended. Then she began subtly proposing her own son as a match. In the 3 years since I came to Qingshui, she had said such things many times. As always, I shook my head and refused. I do not wish to marry again. I should not delay young Master Zhou's prospects. My life was peaceful and free now. I had no desire to embroil myself in marriage again. Madame Zhou did not receive the answer she wanted and kept nagging at my side. Finally, helpless under her persistence, I humored her. All right, I'll consider it. Only then did I coax her into going home. That evening, I was just about to retire for the night when a sound came from outside. As I started to rise, a gust of wind flung the door open. A warm body pressed tightly against mine. Qingyao, do not marry him, I beg you. Shi Jinzhe's voice was pleading and he curled against my shoulder. I tried to push him away but failed. He held me too tightly. Please, do not marry him. I turned my head, refusing to look at him. What does it matter to you whether I marry? His arms tightened around my waist until I could barely breathe. My lord, do not forget, you and I are free to marry as we choose, and neither has anything to do with the oath. Before I could finish, Shi Jinzhe covered my mouth. Please don't say it. I was wrong. Please give me one more chance, just one. Every feature of his face pleaded with me, but I remained unmoved. At last, Shi Jinzhe grew angry. His gaze turned vicious. If you dare marry him, I will make sure he never leaves Qingshui for the rest of his life. My heart jolted. I stared at him, my eyes wide with disbelief. Shi Jinzhe's expression softened again. Qingyao, you are mine. No one can take you from me. Come back with me. Unable to endure another moment, I slapped him across the face. Shi Jinzhe, don't you dare. The blow knocked his head to the side, yet the corners of his mouth lifted high. He pressed closer, his terrifying presence closing around me. For you, what would I not dare to do? My future, my reputation, I can give them all up. I only want you, Qingyao. You are the only one I want, he practically roared the final sentence. Tears slid down his face. Why won't you forgive me? As though all strength had left him, Shi Jinzhe sank to his knees. I made only this one mistake. Why won't you give me another chance? I looked down at him. Shi Jinzhe, I have only one life. I already spent 5 years of it learning my lesson from you. How could I possibly turn back and continue making the same mistake? I love myself more than I love you. Shi Jinzhe lay prostrate on the floor, trembling violently. Shi Jinzhe, whoever you choose to harm has nothing to do with me. If I can give up even you, what does one Zhou Yunqing matter? Perhaps I truly was exhausted. I closed my eyes, trying to ease their ache. I am living very well now, and I like this life. Go back, we will never meet again. The night deepened. The muffled sobs in the room gradually subsided. Shi Jinzhe slowly rose, his eyes bright red. At last, he closed his eyes and let out a heavy breath. All right, Shi Jinzhe seemed truly to have disappeared. Only occasionally did I hear others talking. Shi Jinzhe had refused to marry Suwan, turning her into the capital's laughingstock. The Xu family severed all ties with her. With nowhere else to go, Suan could only continue living in the Xu residence. She had neither title nor status. Wherever she went, people pointed and whispered. Later, Shi Jinzhi returned to the frontier, leaving Suan in the capital. Still later, foreign forces invaded, attacked from front and rear. Shi Jinzhi waited in vain for reinforcements. Even so, he defended the city gate to the death and held it. There was far more than one person in the capital who wanted him dead. What a shame, he was a fine general, but a woman ruined his reputation. People shook their heads and sighed. Most people in the world were like that. No matter how much good you did, they would remember only your flaws. They could never reach your heights, so they clung to that one blemish and tried to drag you down from the pedestal. When Suan came to find me, I was carving a pair of matching jade pendants. She seized my hand and tried to drag me outside. I broke free and looked at her in confusion. Suan's eyes were red, and her voice hoarse. "Come with me to see Jinji." I did not move. "I won't go. He and I have nothing to do with each other." Suan's tears instantly fell. She almost shouted at me. "He is dying." I froze, unable to react for a moment. "He wants to see you. Come and see him once. I beg you. It is his dying wish." Suan covered her face and wept uncontrollably. She said Shi Jinzhi was gravely wounded. Only a single breath kept him alive. Yet he continued murmuring my name. "Please just come see him once. If nothing else, take pity on him. Afterward, I will do anything you ask." After a long silence, I sighed. "Number, there is no one else to look after my shop." Suan had not expected my refusal. Her eyes widened as she stared at me in disbelief. "Shen Qingyao, do you have no heart? He is about to die. Why won't you even grant his final wish?" I answered quietly. "What does his business have to do with me? He was the one who chose to sever every bond between us. In this life, whether in life or death, he and I will never meet again." I had made myself perfectly clear. After locking the shop, I turned and left. Suwon remained where she was, her eyes red, sobbing too hard to speak. That night I slept uneasily. I dreamed of Shi Jinji. He wore full armor and looked imposing and heroic, just as he had when we first met. He seemed to blame me a little. "You heartless little thing. I am about to die, and you still won't come see me." I could not speak in the dream and could only listen to him ramble. "I know I wronged you. I drew you into my life but never took responsibility for you. You have every right to resent me." He said that when he first saw me, only one thought had entered his mind. He wanted to marry me. So when my father entrusted me to him, he told an enormous lie. But then he found the thought absurd. The woman he loved was clearly Suan. Yet the deed was done, and he could only compound one mistake with another. "You have no idea how wonderful you are. I hid you in the residence because I did not want anyone else to see you. Yet I feared such thoughts would frighten you. I thought I was ill, gravely ill, beyond the cure of any physician." On the night at Prince Rong's estate, Suan had gone to see him. She tearfully complained that her husband had forced her personal maid to become his concubine. They had grown up together. Suan was suffering, and Shi Jinji could not pretend it did not pain him. After the scandal broke, Suan became the target of universal condemnation. For her sake, he had cruelly hurt me. You cannot imagine how deeply I regret it. Shi Jinji's voice in the dream grew distant and indistinct. "But all of that is over now. I am going to meet your father too. When I reach the underworld, let the old man beat and curse me soundly to vent your anger." He spoke lightly, but his eyes were filled with profound reluctance to leave. "Fortunately, you have learned to be hard-hearted. I will not have to fear anyone hurting you again." Shi Jinji reached out to touch me, but his hand passed through my body. "Qingyao, I wronged you in this life. In the next, I will serve you like an ox or a horse. I'm sorry, this time it truly is goodbye forever." With that, he vanished into the void. I woke from the dream to find no one beside me. Rain was still falling outside. The watchman's clapper was sounding the third watch. Something tickled my face. I raised a hand and wiped it away. It was a tear. At last, I broke into anguished sobs. I pounded the bed frame beneath me. "Shi Jinji, you bastard. You will never meet my father, and you will never meet me in your next life either. You will swallow 10,000 silver needles, descend to the 18th level of hell, and never be reborn. A faint laugh seemed to sound beside my ear. Then it vanished on the wind. Half a month later, news came from the capital. Shi Jinji had suffered grave wounds half a month earlier and died despite treatment. The emperor ordered that he be buried with state honors. I watched from a great distance. The funeral procession was magnificent, and the entire city's people came out of their own accord to see him off. A month after Shi Jinji's death, Suwan appeared at my door dressed in mourning white. She handed me a chest. These were Jinji's private assets. Before he died, he entrusted them to me to give to you. In the half-month since I had last seen her, she had grown terribly thin. It seemed a single gust of wind might knock her down. The hatred that once filled her eyes when she looked at me had been replaced by desolation. I invited her to stay for a meal, but she shook her head. I have decided to shave my head and enter a convent. There is no longer any place for me in this world. Suwan became a nun. When I had time, I visited her and burned incense while I was there. Gradually, all emotion disappeared from her eyes when she looked at me. 8 years after Shi Jinji's death, Suwan also died. Before she died, she held my hand, tears filling the corners of her eyes. Jinji failed you because of me. If anyone deserves hell, it is me. Now I will go and trade places with him. I will suffer hell in his stead. In the next life, number, let there never be another life. After Suwan's death, Zhou Yunqing and I married. He had waited 8 years for me and had always refused to consider another match. Me red wedding processions stretched for 10 li, and I rode in an 8-bearer bridal sedan. Festive music played all day. In the bridal chamber, he lifted my veil. Elder sister, I finally married you. I smiled, and tears fell with it. A wedding is so much trouble. No wonder Shi Jinji had held no ceremony when he married me. Zhou Yunqing held me, the corners of his eyes red. It is no trouble at all. Nothing is too much trouble if it means marrying you. I will give you so much more in the years to come. The body leaning against my shoulder trembled faintly. Again and again, he called me elder sister. I wrapped my arms tightly around him. It's all right, we can take our time. There is no hurry. The past could not be reclaimed, but the future was still ours to await. We still had countless tomorrows ahead of us. To all my rational thinkers, that concludes this round's story. The silt has settled, and the dust has cleared. Next, we will continue unpacking the rules of another contest, hidden in the darker layers of human nature. On my wedding night, I sat before the dragon and phoenix candles beneath the weight of my phoenix coronet until dawn. Only after the sky had brightened did my new husband, young General Shi Jinxi of the mighty frontier army, kneel before me alongside his disheveled, flush-dyed cousin. Shi Jinxi's face was full of remorse as he wept. My lady, my comrades kept pressing wine on me last night. I became terribly drunk. When I felt my way back in the dark after midnight, I took a wrong turn and entered the guest room where my cousin was resting. There was no lamp lit inside. In my confusion, I mistook her for you and committed a grave wrong. But my cousin's chastity has been ruined. I cannot abandon her. I beg my lady to be magnanimous and allow her the status of a co-wife. His cousin, Lin Wana, also kowtowed through her tears. It is all my fault. I saw how drunk cousin was and only wanted to give him some sobering soup, but he was too strong. Please grant us your blessing, sister-in-law. Seated upright on the canopy bed, I looked at this devoted pair and could not help laughing aloud. You entered the wrong room, mistook her for someone else. I rose and looked down at the young general renowned throughout the capital. My voice was crisp, every word cutting like a knife. When the young general raided an enemy camp on the northern frontier, he could locate and destroy the enemy commander's tent in a pitch-black desert. Yet upon returning to his own estate, he cannot distinguish the principal courtyard, hung with 200-pound scarlet lanterns and bright as day, from a remote unlit guest room. Shi Jinxi's face turned deathly pale, and cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Too bored to spare him another glance, I turned, pulled out a sheet of fine paper, and swept my brush across it. Shi Jinxi, if you insist on treating me like a fool, you should at least make your act convincing. The Shen family would never dare keep a useless man who is deaf, blind, and unable to tell friend from foe. Here is the divorce agreement. Take your precious cousin and get out of my principal courtyard. The divorce agreement fluttered down at Shi Jingxi's feet. The 8 bold characters declaring that we would part in peace and each seek happiness elsewhere stabbed at his eyes. Shi Jingxi jerked his head up and stared at me in disbelief. Shen Ning, have you lost your mind? She is not taking your place as lawful wife. What man from a great household does not have several wives and concubines? I came to discuss this civilly only out of respect for your dignity as the Chief Grand Secretary's legitimate daughter. Yet you dare demand a divorce. He evidently thought I was merely putting on airs and acting jealous. He believed that since the wedding rites were complete, I would have no choice but to swallow the humiliation for my family's reputation. I looked at him coldly, as if at a ridiculous clown. Discuss. Shi Jingxi, you have misunderstood one thing. I, Shen Ning, will tolerate no grain of sand in my eye, much less a piece of filth like you who takes others for fools. If you had any courage, you should have come to the Shen family before the wedding and openly asked to marry your cousin. You covet the Shen family's power, yet cannot bear to surrender the pleasures of your cousin's bed. You even use an excuse as pathetic as I entered the wrong room, one that could not fool a 3-year-old, to disgust me. Shi Jingxi, not only is your character vile, but your stupidity is nauseating. Seeing this, Lin Wana immediately shuffled forward on her knees and clutched the hem of my skirt. Sister-in-law, please calm your anger. This is all Wana's fault. I ask for no title. Even if I become only a bedchamber maid, it will be enough to serve at cousin's side. Please do not let Wana damage the harmony between husband and wife. I yanked my foot away in disgust and kicked her aside. Do not touch me, you're filthy. Since you are so deeply in love, I will grant you your wish. Sign it, then take her and get out. Shi Jingxi laughed in fury. He rose and looked down at me. Shen Ning, don't regret this. Do you think you can find a better husband after divorcing me? A woman cast aside on the 2nd day of her marriage is ruined for life. I laughed. I am divorcing you. I am not being repudiated. As for whether I am ruined, you will know soon enough. But you, Shi Jingxi, will soon lose even the right to stand here and speak to me. I turned and coldly instructed the senior maid behind me. Nanny Li, take my household token and summon our people. Within half an hour, move every last thing that belongs to me out of here. Every Shen family guard had been chosen from 100 candidates, in less time than it took an incense stick to burn. 300 towering men with long sabers at their waists had surrounded the general's principal courtyard. At the sight, Shi Jingxi's expression changed completely. Shen Ning, what are you doing? This is the general's residence. You will not run wild here. I sat in a grand armchair in the center of the courtyard and sipped my tea unhurriedly. Moving my dowry, General Shi, can't you see? Since we are divorcing, naturally I will take my belongings with me. Nanny Li held the long dowry inventory and called out in a ringing voice. 1 rosewood canopy bed, dismantle it. 1 pair of Huangwali stacking cabinets, move them. 12 double-sided Suzhou embroidery screens, carry them away. The guards charged inside like wolves and tigers, moving swiftly without the slightest hesitation. In moments, the once opulent bridal chamber stood empty. Not even a strip of gauze remained. Shi Jingxi trembled with rage and pointed at my nose as he cursed. Shen Ning, you are acting like a bandit. Anything carried through the Shi family's gates belongs to the Shi family. I sneered and set my teacup down hard on the table. Under the laws of Great Shi, a woman takes her entire dowry when she divorces. If General Shi does not even understand the laws of Great Shi, why not file a case against me at Shanshin Prefecture? Then we will see whether the prefect sides with an ingrate who favors a mistress and casts aside his wife, or with the Shen family. Shi Jingxi was left speechless, his face alternating between green and white. Lin Wana stared at the rare treasures being carried away in a steady stream, her eyes fixed in astonishment. She had probably never seen so many fine things in her life. Sister-in-law, Thursday, this is improper. The general's household is still a distinguished family. If you empty the place, how will the general receive guests? It was as though I had heard the greatest joke in the world. What does the way he receives guests have to do with me? Or does Miss Lin believe her skill at crawling into a man's bed at midnight can preserve the general's prestige? My barb turned Lin Wanna's face scarlet. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she looked at Shi Jingxi. Cousin, Shi Jingxi gathered her into his arms protectively and glared at me. Shen Ning, do not go too far. And what if I do? I rose and walked up to Shi Jingxi, my gaze icy. The Shen family raised you into the clouds, and we can grind you into the mud. Take down those 200-pound scarlet lanterns at the gate. Since General Xia is so blind that even lanterns that bright cannot keep him from losing his way, hanging them is a waste. Smash them. Bang, bang. 2 deafening crashes sounded. The red lanterns, symbolizing newlywed joy, were hurled to the ground and trampled to pieces by the guards. Shi Jingxi's face looked worse than the crushed lanterns. Stepping over the scarlet wreckage, I walked leisurely out through the general's gates. Less than half an hour after I returned to my family home, my father, Shen Tai, the current chief grand secretary, returned from court. After hearing my account, he neither flew into a rage nor struck the table. He merely lifted his teacup and skimmed the foam from its surface. He entered the wrong room, mistook her for someone else. Father sneered, a keen light flashing through his eyes. He dares bring such utter nonsense before the Shen family and expect us to believe it. Did the war at the frontier knock the sense out of Shi Jingxi's head? I knelt before my father with my back straight. Your daughter has been unfilial and brought shame upon you. Ninger, you did exactly right. Father set down his teacup and helped me up. My daughter would rather divorce with her head held high than swallow such foul humiliation. But this account cannot be settled so easily. Father walked to his desk and opened a memorial to the throne. If he dares use deafness, blindness, and loss of direction as his excuse, then I will see that he gets his wish. At tomorrow's morning court, I will make every civil and military official under heaven understand just how gravely ill young General Shi Jingxi is. Early the next morning, in the imperial throne hall, the assembled officials stood solemnly amid an atmosphere of ceremony. Shi Jingxi stood among the military officers, his face still pale. He clearly had not slept well. Now and then he looked toward father, guilt and unease in his eyes. After the chief eunuch called, "Present your memorials or court is dismissed," my father, Chief Grand Secretary Shen Tai, walked steadily to the center of the hall with an ivory court tablet in his hands. "Your subject has a matter to report." Seated on the dragon throne, the emperor answered mildly. "Minister Shen, speak." "Your subject impeaches young General Shi Jingxi of the mighty frontier army." An uproar swept through the court. Everyone knew that the previous day had been the joyous union of the Shen and Shi families. Yet today, the chief grand secretary was impeaching his brand new son-in-law before the entire court. Such a thing had never happened. Shi Jingxi shuddered and jerked his head up, staring at my father in disbelief. He had probably expected father to reprimand him in private at most, or force him to punish Lin Wanna. He never imagined father would confront him directly before the emperor. "Minister Shen, Shi Jingxi is your esteemed son-in-law. What is this about?" Even the emperor was surprised. Father dropped to his knees with a thud, his voice sorrowful yet ringing with force. "Your Majesty, the humiliation of your subject's daughter is a small matter. The safety of the realm is paramount. Your subject implores your Majesty to reclaim Shi Jingxi's military authority at once and remove him from his post as young general of the mighty frontier army." The court instantly fell silent. To strip him of military power was a strike at the very heart of his position. At last, Shi Jingxi panicked. He rushed forward and knelt beside father. "Father-in-law, even if your son-in-law erred, it was merely a matter of the inner household. How can you ruin my future before His Majesty over a private grudge?" He turned toward the emperor and kowtowed repeatedly. "Your Majesty, please judge wisely. Yesterday your subject merely drank too much, lost his senses, entered the wrong courtyard, and slept with his cousin by mistake. Your subject has never betrayed the court, nor neglected his duty in the slightest. He was still using that foolish excuse. Before all the civil and military officials, he personally placed the knife in my father's hand. Father rose and looked down at him, his eyes filled with pity and mockery. "Your Majesty, esteemed colleagues, you have all heard him. General Shi has admitted with his own mouth that within his own residence, hung with red lanterns and bright as day, a few extra cups of wine were enough to make him lose his bearings and enter the wrong courtyard. Worse, he could not even distinguish the woman beside him, his lawfully wedded wife, from his cousin. Father turned to face the dragon throne, his voice ringing like a great bell. Your Majesty, if a general can lose his way in his own rear courtyard, can he distinguish east from west on a battlefield of complex terrain? If a commander cannot recognize the woman beside him, can he distinguish friend from foe during an enemy night raid? Xi Jingxi is mentally confused, unable to recognize directions, friend or foe. Clearly he suffers from severe night blindness and a grave disorder of the brain. To place the lives of tens of thousands of great Qi soldiers in the hands of such a cripple would be to sacrifice the entire army. Such an incompetent man must never command troops. Every sentence rolled through the hall like the peal of a great bell. The logic was airtight and unassailable. Did you not claim you entered the wrong room and mistook one person for another? Fine. Then I would prove you blind and brain-damaged and unfit to command soldiers. The way every civil and military official looked at Xi Jingxi changed. Military officers valued battlefield ability above all and demanded sharp eyes and ears. In their eyes, a general who could get lost in his own home was a complete joke. Lord Shen speaks reasonably. General Xi's conduct was indeed absurd. If he cannot even find his way, how can he lead soldiers into battle? I think General Xi should return home for treatment before he harms the affairs of state. Their whispers pierced Xi Jingxi's heart like countless knives. He lay prostrate, trembling all over, his face white as paper. At last he realized how foolish his supposedly clever excuse had been. With his own hands he had dug himself a bottomless grave. From the dragon throne, the emperor studied Xi Jingxi for a long while. Every emperor of Great Qi had been deeply wary of the military power held by generals. Xi Jingxi had won repeated victories at the frontier in recent years, and his growing prominence had already put the emperor on guard. Now that Chief Grand Secretary Shen had personally offered him a knife, how could the emperor refuse it? Stripping Xi Jingxi of command on the grounds of diseased eyes and mind was perfectly justified and would not unsettle the army. It was a heaven-sent opportunity. The emperor coughed softly, and the hall fell utterly silent. Minister Shen speaks truly. Xi Jingxi is an official and commander of the imperial court, yet he became lost in his own residence and could not distinguish friend from foe. Clearly his illness is severe, and he is no longer fit to wield military authority. The emperor's voice was majestic and cold. Deliver this decree. From this day forward, reclaim Xi Jingxi's seal of office and Tiger Tally as young general of the mighty frontier army. Strip him of the right to command troops and dismiss him from every military post. He is to remain behind closed doors, reflect upon his errors, and recover at home. Without our decree, he may not take a single step beyond the general's residence. The imperial decree fell like a bolt from a clear sky. Xi Jingxi collapsed to the floor, eyes wide and spiritless. Your Majesty, your subject is not ill, Your Majesty. That night was only an excuse. I only wanted to protect my cousin. In his terror, he finally shouted the truth. But he had forgotten that deceiving the emperor before the entire court only added to his crime. The emperor snorted coldly. Oh, you mean that for the sake of a mere concubine, you deliberately deceived us and your lawful wife? An imperial official who resorts to such vile methods in his own household is corrupt in character and unworthy of his position. Guards, drag this shameless madman out. 2 imperial guards charged forward, seized Xi Jingxi, and hauled him away. The once-spirited young general was dragged from the throne hall like a dead dog. His wails echoed across the empty square, yet stirred not a trace of sympathy. After court, father stepped out of the hall and smiled faintly at the rising sun. That whelp thought himself worthy of crossing the Shen family. Meanwhile, I sat in the Shen residence garden, calmly placed a black stone on the board, and listened to a servant's report. 1 stone fell, and the entire board came alive. Xi Jingxi, you disgusted me all morning with an excuse that insulted my intelligence. So I used unassailable logic to destroy your entire future. It was an excellent bargain for me. News that Shi Jingxi had been stripped of military command flew through the entire capital in half a day. In tea houses and taverns, storytellers sprayed spittle as they recounted the scandal. Honored guests, have you heard? The young general of the mighty frontier army suffers from a rare case of night blindness. Even at home, with hundreds of pounds of red lanterns hanging overhead, he still could not find the door to the principal room. Not only could he not find the door, he mistook his cousin, reeking of rouge and powder, for the chief grand secretary's noble daughter. The audience erupted in thunderous laughter. Night blind. I say he is colorblind and brainless. If a man cannot recognize his own wife, how can he fight a war, send a few women from the enemy camp, and he will probably forget his own surname? Military circles worshipped strength and had no tolerance for cowards or fools. The colleagues who once crowded around Shi Jingxi with flattery now avoided him like poison. Several hot-tempered generals even rode deliberately past the general's residence. Blind Shi, can you find your front door today? Want your brothers to lend you a cane? Ha ha ha. Their crude mockery passed over the high courtyard wall and pierced Shi Jingxi's ears. The general's residence, once thronged with visitors, now stood tightly shuttered and deserted, trapped in the empty estate and forced to listen to the insults outside. Shi Jingxi smashed everything he could lay his hands on. He stared at the wreckage with bloodshot eyes like a maddened beast. He could not understand. It had merely been a small mistake any man might make. Merely a clever excuse that would let him take his cousin into the household naturally. How had he gone overnight from a powerful young general to a useless man despised by everyone? He collapsed to the floor and clutched his head in agony. Lin Wanna's life was even worse than Shi Jingxi's. She had believed that if she survived the previous night and made their union an accomplished fact, she could rely on her cousin's favor to wield power throughout the magnificent general's residence. Even life as a co-wife would be 100 times better than depending on another family's charity. She had never imagined that I would leave so decisively and take every source of the household's confidence with me. The general's household had enormous expenses. When the Shen guards moved my dowry, they also carried off the valuables belonging to the general's residence. The household could no longer support so many servants and guards. In less than 3 days, the servants began demanding their wages. At his wit's end, the steward had no choice but to ask Shi Jingxi for instructions. Shi Jingxi was already distraught. Where could he find money to pay them? With no alternative, he ordered 80% of the servants dismissed. Only a handful of old, weak, sick, and disabled servants remained in the once vast residence, leaving it lifeless. What devastated Lin Wanna most was that Shi Jingxi had been dismissed from military service, and his salary stopped. They had no money for food. Cousin, there is not a single grain of rice left in the kitchen. Holding an empty bowl, Lin Wanna approached Shi Jingxi with reddened eyes. Shi Jingxi raised his head and looked at her through bloodshot eyes. In the past, he had found his cousin most lovable when she looked frail and pitiable. Now she only irritated him. If there's no rice, go buy some. Must you bother me over such a trivial matter? But there is no silver left in the residence. Lin Wanna bit her lip in grievance. Shi Jingxi froze. That poisonous woman, Shen Ning. How could she be so ruthless? He pushed all the blame onto me. Lin Wanna ventured, cousin, perhaps you could pawn the Duan inkstone in your study. That Duan inkstone, the most precious of Shi Jingxi's scholars' treasures, was worth a fortune. Shi Jingxi leaped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. That was bestowed by the emperor. You want me to pawn an imperial gift? Are you trying to get the entire household executed? Lin Wanna jumped in fright, and tears began to fall. Then what can we do? Are we supposed to starve to death? Her heart filled with regret and resentment. She had schemed so hard to climb into Shi Jingxi's bed because she wanted wealth and luxury, not to starve and freeze beside him. How did this ruined estate resemble a powerful household in the slightest? It was worse than the home of an ordinary commoner. Cry, cry, cry. Is that all you know how to do? If not for you, how would I have fallen this far? Unable to suppress his vicious temper any longer, Shi Jingxi slapped Lin Wanna across the face. The sharp sound echoed through the empty room. Clutching her swollen cheek, Lin Wanna stared at Shi Jingxi in disbelief. The cousin who had once indulged her every wish and treated her with such tenderness had actually struck her. They stared at each other, every trace of their former tenderness gone. Only the ugliness of a destitute couple whose every hardship bred misery remained. My days in the Shen residence were extraordinarily pleasant. Each day I admired flowers and drank tea with mother, or played several games of Go with father. The Shen family stood so high that matchmakers seeking my hand nearly wore down the threshold every day. Everyone knew that although I, Shen Ning, had been divorced once, I was the Chief Grand Secretary's beloved daughter. Moreover, I had not merely escaped without suffering. I had ruined Shi Jingxi's name and standing. The capital's great clans valued advantageous marriages. Above all, who would not covet a legitimate daughter with both means and influence? Who could empty an entire estate? Father selected several young men from respectable families with excellent character and sent their portraits to me. Ninga, take a look. Does anyone please you? I leafed through them casually until my gaze fell on a refined, gentle face. It belonged to Pei Heng, the Grand Princess's legitimate son and the youngest top-ranked scholar at court. Unlike the coarse military officer Shi Jingxi, Pei Heng possessed the natural elegance of a learned man and was truly favored by heaven. Him, then. I nodded, my tone even. I had never expected something as insubstantial as love from marriage. What I wanted was the respect of equal standing and the security of an alliance between two powerful families. Pei Heng was an excellent partner. When the news spread, the capital erupted once more. The Chief Grand Secretary's daughter was remarrying the Grand Princess's legitimate son. What a splendid match! That splendor struck Shi Jingxi across the face like a ringing slap. According to a servant, after Shi Jingxi learned that I would marry Pei Heng, he raged in the courtyard for an entire day. He pounded the wall with his bare fists until both hands streamed with blood. He could not understand why, after leaving him, I had not been ruined as he predicted, but instead lived better and better. He had probably forgotten. His influence, his position, and all the prestige of his rank as young general had come from the Shen family. What I could give, I could naturally take back. Having lost everything, he was worth less than an ant in my eyes. His greatest mistake was treating my boundaries as steps he could trample on his way upward. He thought he had merely entered the wrong room. In truth, he had taken the wrong path through his entire life. 3 months later, before the first snow of early winter had fallen, the capital was submerged in celebratory red. The marriage between the Grand Princess's household and that of the Chief Grand Secretary was more magnificent than an ordinary imperial wedding. My dowry procession stretched from the Shen residence to the Grand Princess's estate, winding around more than half the capital. 128 loads of genuine treasures made every bearer's steps heavy. Crowds packed both sides of the streets, their exclamations rising and falling. Good heavens! The Shen family's eldest daughter is truly blessed. Her second wedding is 100 times grander than her first. Naturally, the Chief Grand Secretary's daughter and the top-ranked scholar are a match made in heaven. Not like that blind fool Shi who threw away a golden phoenix to sleep with a common pheasant. I sat inside the spacious 8-bearer bridal sedan, listening to the voices outside with a heart as still as water. When a breeze briefly lifted the curtain, I saw a familiar, haggard face. It was Shi Jingxi. He wore an old cotton robe washed nearly white and frayed in places, huddling in a corner of the crowd. The once spirited young general who had ridden proudly through the streets now looked withered, no different from a beggar. He stared fixedly at my bridal sedan, his eyes so red they seemed to bleed and every vein in his neck standing out. He was jealous, frenzied, and consumed by regret. But he no longer even had the courage to rush forward. The escort around my bridal procession consisted of the Grand Princess's finest guards. If he dared take one step closer, they would beat him to death on the spot. The curtain fell, shutting out his nauseating gaze. I sat upright inside and gently stroked the finest mutton fat jade bracelet on my wrist. Look, Shi Jingxi, after leaving your stinking mire, I remained the bright moon high above, but you, blind in every sense, would rot in the mud forever. In the depths of winter, heavy snow fell over the capital. The general's residence could not even afford a single brazier of charcoal. Shi Jingxi and Lin Wan are huddled beneath the same tattered quilt, shivering with cold. Cousin, I'm hungry. Lin Wana's voice was as faint as a mosquito's buzz. Her once fair, smooth face was now covered in red, swollen chilblains and looked hideous. Shy Jingxi irritably kicked her away. Hungry, hungry, hungry. Is that all you know how to say? Who insisted on climbing into my bed? Who pretended to be so deeply in love? If not for a wretch like you, how would I have lost Ning'er? How would I have fallen to this state? The kick caught Lin Wana in the abdomen. She curled up in pain, a vicious light flashing through her eyes. No longer pretending to be a delicate little flower, she pointed at She Jingxi and cursed him savagely. She Jingxi, stop dumping all the blame on me. You were the one who coveted my youth and beauty. You were the one who wanted the pleasure of 2 women. You brainless fool tried to deceive Shen Ning with that idiotic excuse, only to drop the stone on your own foot. You cannot recognize a road or distinguish one woman from another. You deserve to lose your command. You deserve to be useless. I must have been blind to choose a good-for-nothing who cannot even afford a meal. Every sentence stabbed directly at Shi Jingxi's heart. His breathing grew heavy, his eyes blood-red like a crazed wild dog's more than anything. He hated anyone mentioning his humiliation of mistaking the road and the woman. It had been the stupidest and most fatal mistake of his life. He lunged forward, straddled Lin Wana, and slapped her savagely from side to side. Wretch, keep talking. Go on. Lin Wana fought back, screaming as she raked her long nails across Shi Jingxi's face. They rolled together across the bitterly cold floor, biting and cursing each other. Blood and clumps of hair littered the ground. When exhaustion finally overtook them, they collapsed like dead dogs. Shi Jingxi stared at the hole in the roof where the wind blew through, and tears slid silently down his face. He regretted everything. Regret twisted through his organs until he wanted to carve his own heart out with a knife. He remembered his days fighting on the northern frontier. Life had been bitter and exhausting then, but he had possessed hope and dignity. Later, the Shen family took notice of him, and he married the most noble woman in the capital that day, standing before the Shen residence and looking at the magnificent red dowry procession. He had believed himself the luckiest man in the world. Shen Ning was beautiful, intelligent, and noble. As long as he behaved himself, the Shen family could have guaranteed him a lifetime of wealth, honor, and effortless advancement. But he had not been content. He wanted the power brought by the Shen family, yet could not surrender Lin Wana's flattering adoration. Thinking himself supremely clever, he devised the brilliant plan of entering the wrong room while drunk. He believed that once the deed was done, he could blame the wine, and Shen Ning would have no choice but to accept it for the sake of her family's reputation. He had even rehearsed countless times how he would kneel, beg forgiveness, and weep remorsefully. He never anticipated that Shen Ning's logic would be so airtight or her methods so ruthless. A general could not possibly enter the wrong room. Those words struck like a bolt of thunder, shattering his disguise and his future indeed. He was a general who could locate an enemy commander precisely during a night raid. How could he possibly get lost in his own home when it was bright as day? Yet he had tried to deceive the daughter raised by the chief grand secretary with such an absurd lie. He was an utter fool, a fool beyond saving. If he had honestly returned to the principal room that night, he would now be sitting in a chamber warm as spring. He would be drinking pre-rain Longjing tea, watching his gentle wife smile, and enjoying the respect of every official instead. He was brawling with a hideous shrew in this drafty ruin. One thought could lead to heaven, another to hell. With his own hands he had smashed the ladder to heaven. Another half-month passed, and the general's household pawned the last garment of any value. The steward also fled, stealing the half-sack of coarse rice left in the kitchen before he went. Shi Jingxi went hungry for 2 full days, and his stomach burned like fire. He looked at Lin Wana lying near death from hunger on a pile of straw, and a terrifying murderous intent at his eyes. If not for this woman, he would never have fallen so far. If she died, would Shen Ning forgive him? Yes, Shen Ning was so intelligent. She must know that this wretch had seduced him. He needed only kill the wretch and use her life to apologize to Shen Ning. Shen Ning would surely see his sincerity and understand that he had completely awakened. Under extreme despair and hunger, his reason had become utterly warped and deranged. Like a drowning man, Shi Jingxi clutched desperately at that illusory straw. He slowly rose and walked toward Lin Wana. Lin Wana opened her eyes in terror. "Cousin, what are you doing?" Shi Jingxi bared his teeth in a blood-curdling smile. "Did you not say you loved your cousin more than anything?" If you love me, then lend me your life. Trade your life for my future. He lunged and clamped both hands around Linwana's throat. Die, this is all your fault. Linwana struggled desperately, clawing wildly with both hands and kicking against the floor. Her mouth stretched open, but no sound emerged. Her eyes gradually bulged and filled with red veins as she stared at the man to whom she had once entrusted her life. Only then did she understand that he had never loved her. He loved only himself and power. Her struggles slowly weakened. At last, Linwana's hands fell limply, her eyes still wide with resentment in death. Shujingxi released her and gasped for breath. Looking at the body growing cold on the floor, he felt no fear. Instead, he burst into maniacal laughter. She's dead. The source of every wrong is finally dead. Ninga, wait for me. I will prove my true heart to you now. Early the next morning, before the Grand Princess's estate, I was preparing to board a carriage and accompany Pei Heng to offer incense at Fahua Temple outside the city. Suddenly, a blood-covered madman with disheveled hair rushed from the street corner and dropped to his knees before my carriage. The guards immediately drew their sabers and shielded me behind them. Who are you? How dare you obstruct the young madam's carriage? The madman raised his head, revealing a filthy face whose features remained recognizable. It was Si Jingxi. He carried a blood-soaked bundle, his eyes burning with the fervor of a cultist. Ninga, look at me. I know I was wrong. I truly know it now. He threw the bloody bundle to the ground. It fell open, and a human head rolled out. It was Linwana's head, her eyes still wide in death. The surrounding people screamed in terror and fled in every direction. Pei Heng frowned slightly and stepped forward, blocking my view with his body. Do not look, it will dirty your eyes. I gently pushed Pei Heng's arm aside and looked calmly at Shi Jingxi, as though at a heap of stinking refuse. Xi Jingxi, what are you doing? Seeing that I had finally looked at him, Shi Jingxi trembled with excitement. Ninga, do you see? That wretch who seduced me, the one who destroyed our marriage, I killed her. Back then, I was truly blinded and bewitched by that wretch. That was why I entered the wrong room. Now I have killed her with my own hands. I have washed away my guilt. He kowtowed as tears and snot streamed down his face. Ninga, please give me one more chance. I promise I will treat only you well from now on. I will serve you like an ox or a horse. Please come back to me. I have proved my devotion for you. I am willing to do anything. He looked at me expectantly, as though he had offered not a bloody human head but a priceless treasure. The madness on Shi Jingxi's face, so moved by his own actions, struck me as utterly ridiculous. This was the once arrogant young general of the mighty frontier army, the man who had tried to treat everyone under heaven as a fool. For me, I sneered, my clear voice cutting through the cold morning wind. Shi Jingxi, must you invent such a sanctimonious, revolting excuse even for murder? I descended the steps and stopped 3 paces away, looking down at him. You did not kill her to apologize to me. You killed her because the general's residence could no longer afford rice, because she had become a burden, because she saw through you and recognized that you were useless. With every sentence, Shi Jingxi's face grew paler. His body began to shake violently, as though someone had stripped him naked and thrown him into a frozen wilderness. I continued, using emotionless logic to tear away his final scrap of modesty. Your claim that you killed for me is merely an excuse for trying to attach yourself to the powerful again. You do not even have the courage to admit that you are selfish and cowardly. Did you think bringing me a severed head would hide your nauseating greed and incompetence? Xi Jingxi, you are not merely stupid. You are vicious. A man who can murder the woman who shared his bed and even bore disgrace for his sake is nothing more than a mad dog who recognizes no bond or kin. You disgust me. I looked away in revulsion, as though one more glance would dirty my eyes. With every word I spoke, Shi Jingxi's world collapsed completely. The flawless pledge of loyalty he imagined he had made, the deep love he believed could move heaven itself, was less than a joke before my logic. His final disguise was mercilessly pierced, exposing the rotten, stinking soul beneath. No, that isn't true. I love you. He muttered in despair and tried to crawl toward me. Ninga, believe me, I truly... Enough. I cut him off coldly. I turned to the chief constable of Shunshan Prefecture, who had already been drawn by the commotion, Chief Constable Zhao. This officer is here. Chief Constable Zhao hurried forward and bowed. I pointed at Shi Jingxi and the severed head on the ground, my voice icy and flat. This man committed murder and displayed the body in a crowded street. His methods were cruel and deranged. Under the laws of Great Qi, what is the punishment for murder in the street? Chief Constable Zhao's expression hardened as he drew his saber. Young madam, the law demands execution. Very good, I nodded. Then I must trouble you to seize this murderer and deal with him according to law. Yes, at Chief Constable Zhao's signal, several constables rushed forward and pinned Shi Jingxi to the ground. A cold iron chain closed around his neck with a piercing clatter. At last, Shi Jingxi broke completely. Like a dying fish, he thrashed and screamed on the ground. Shen Ning, you poisonous woman, you will die a horrible death. You destroyed everything I had. You drove me to my death. Even as a ghost, I will never let you go. His curses echoed through the street, but stirred not the slightest ripple in my heart. I turned away and allowed Pei Heng to help me gently into the carriage. Husband, the wind is strong. Let us go. All right, as my lady wishes. The wheels rolled over the flagstone road. Shi Jingxi's curses grew fainter and finally vanished into the wind. 3 days later, at the marketplace execution ground, Shi Jingxi was sentenced to be beheaded after autumn, but he did not even survive that long. He went completely insane in prison, telling everyone he met that he was a young general and had merely entered the wrong room. The jailers found him noisy and knew that he was a condemned man who had offended both the chief grand secretary and the grand princess. During an accidental shove, he struck his head against the stone wall of his cell. Blood covered his face, and he died on the spot. The fool who tried to deceive everyone with the excuse that he had entered the wrong room ended his pathetic life in the most ridiculous manner possible. When the news reached the Grand Princess's estate, I was pruning a rare pot of black orchids. After hearing the maid's report, my shears never paused as I precisely snipped away a withered yellow leaf. I understand, you may go. Pei Heng approached from behind and gently draped a cloak over my shoulders. What are you thinking about? He asked warmly. I looked at the brilliant sunlight beyond the window, a faint smile touching my lips. I was thinking that there will always be men who believe themselves clever and treat women as fools they can deceive at will. They think one weightless excuse can erase every betrayal and scheme. They do not understand that before reason and logic, their vile tricks are thinner than paper. I turned and looked at the clear-headed, restrained man before me, one who understood proper boundaries. Husband, would you agree? Pei Heng took my hand, his eyes filled with admiration and respect. My lady is entirely correct. The wise do not drown in love. Only a clear mind can break the game. No lie in this world can deceive my lady's eyes. I smiled and clasped his hand in return. Indeed, tears belonged only to the weak, and I, Shen Ning, was the player who ruled the board. Those who tried to insult my intelligence with their revolting schemes would learn what it meant to suffer death by 1,000 cuts of logic, their bones ground to ash.